on this episode of the Brothers Mysterium.
It was a solid figure.
At this point, I think I'm going to be like a ghost whisperer or something.
It was quick because once I saw it, I totally myself, ran.
What is that? What was that? What was that?
Are they actual glimpses into the world of the supernatural, or just frantic moments fueled by confusion and superstition? Today, we're talking ghost sightings.
My brother and I have always been intrigued by the unexplainable. Like many, we're fascinated with stories of the supernatural, fringe science, and modern-day mysteries.
Though we've seen no first-hand proof of its existence, our minds remain open to the possibility.
Unsatisfied with the so-called evidence on television and the internet, we are choosing to take matters into our own hands and conduct our own interviews and research.
Now we're on a quest to speak with as many people as we can and hear the stories of these events from those who have lived them.
No Hollywood effects or exaggerations, and no hidden agenda. We invite you to listen and decide what and who you believe.
We are the Brothers Mysterium.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Brothers Mysterium. I am Tommy alongside my brother Eric.
Heyo.
This is our first episode, and today's subject matter is going to be all about ghost sighting.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously a ghost sighting is when someone spots a ghost. To classify it as a sighting, usually it's a one-time event. It happens very quickly, and it tends to happen in the exact type of place where you'd expect it to happen. Somewhere dark, scary, abandoned. Usually it's nighttime. It's these same characteristics that can often make these stories seem somewhat questionable, because they do happen quickly, and they do happen at night, and they do happen in places where the imagination is already in overdrive. It could be just as likely that the person was confused about what they might have seen.
It's one of those things, too, like Aziz Ansari has a great joke where he talks about how come there are no modern-day ghosts. Anytime somebody sees a ghost, it's always in colonial clothes, or it had a powdered wig and a musket, but people are dying all the time.
Right.
I hope I see a ghost at some point, because if I see one, it'd be very interesting, because I live in a modern building, a newer building, so if I saw a ghost, it would be like a modern ghost, you know? I would just wake up in the middle of the night, there'd be a dude in the corner texting. Boo. Those will be the best ghosts. Those will be the best ghost stories. You come home one day, you turn on your TV, you look on your Netflix. What? Mad Men Season 5, previously viewed. I never watched. They're on Season 5! Those will be the best ghosts. You wake up in the middle of the night, there's some ghost standing over your bed. What's your Wi-Fi password?
My fiance once brought up the fact that how come hospitals aren't like the most haunted places ever? People always go to cemeteries where it's creepy and it's dark and it's desolate and it's scary, and they say, oh, there's ghosts all over here. Nobody dies in cemeteries. Well, I'm sure people have died in cemeteries, but nobody really dies in a cemetery the way they die in hospitals. And yet hospitals are, you might find your occasional ghost story, but they're not like rife or full to the brim with these hauntings, you know?
Yeah, and they have what I like to call the recipe for a ghost, which is, as you said, big turnover rate of people dying, and it goes back to, once again, the imagination. It's nighttime, you're in a cemetery, it's creepy, so of course ghosts have to be here. They're dead people.
Right.
When in reality, you're in a cemetery during the day, you're not thinking, am I going to see a ghost right now? It's more your mind playing tricks on you.
Yeah, exactly. When you walk into a cemetery, I remember as kids when we would go on vacations, we'd be driving in the car, we would hold our breath when we passed cemeteries. Just like, That's
because I thought you farted. Oh.
Oh, man. No, but that's the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Superstition,
yeah, that just lingers in the mind. And as you grow up, you see a cemetery, you're like, oh, this place has to be haunted. But, when I fell off my bike as a kid and cut my head open and had to go to the emergency room, I wasn't considering, the number of people who had died in this very building and who were probably dying at that very moment in that same building.
That is true.
And therefore, I experienced no hauntings.
A girl I know named Georgia actually had a really good story that I think kind of sums up people's feelings and attitude about ghost sightings. I asked her, have you ever seen a ghost? And she's from Vermont, so this will make sense. And she was like, no, for me, it's a lot like seeing a moose. And I'm like, what? A moose? What do you mean? And she's like, well, there's a lot of moose up in Vermont, and I know people that have seen them. I know people that haven't, but when they see it, they say it's awesome. It's this giant animal. It's majestic, and you're walking down the, hiking trail, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a moose. But at the same time, she doesn't want to see a moose because it's humongous. It's got giant antlers. If it charged her, it would run her over and crush her. And she said it's the same thing with a ghost, where part of her really wants to see a ghost. She knows some people that have these ghost stories, whatever. But at the same time, she really doesn't want to encounter a ghost just because she's afraid what might happen. And I think that's a lot of people's attitude where, I find when I talk to them about it, if they haven't seen one, they're like, I might want to see one, but I don't really know. There's a little bit of hesitation there when it comes to wanting to truly encounter a ghost.
The Brothers
Mysterium.
So the year was, I can't remember. I was in about 7th grade. It was Halloween night. So
All right, this guy on the phone, his name is Beef. He's a good friend of Tom's. And when Tom heard that Beef had a ghost sighting story, he decided to call him up to see how it all went down.
7th grade, Halloween night, and if you were like myself, it was a very exciting time to be alive on Halloween night when you're in 7th grade. Because you're a little bit past the stage where you just go around getting as much candy as you could. But you're getting to that point where you'd like to, mess things up, cause a havoc.
Absolutely.
So I was causing some havoc with my best friend, Champ. So Beef and Champ in the town of Nahant, Massachusetts. We did a little tricking, mostly tricking, a little shooting.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Nahant is a small town in northern Massachusetts. It's about a half hour's drive from Boston. Population's just over 3,000, so definitely not a big town. And Beef told us that on Halloween, in Nahant, as the trick-or-treating kind of dies down around the neighborhood, all the kids meet at the town hall for some Halloween-themed activities.
They have a little haunted house that the town puts on, and, it's fun just to see your friends at the end of the night when everyone's covered in eggs and shaving cream and what have you, and toilet paper. So it was just a good old Halloween festive night.
As the fun and games at the town hall begin to die down, Beef and Champ decide, time to call it a night.
Folks still had us on a short leash, so had to be home at a reasonable hour. My best friend Champ actually lives just a block or two away from me. And we're walking back. There is this old school that's about on the other side of Champ and my house. It's about 2 blocks the other way. It's this abandoned school. It's called the Valley Road School. And it's since been turned into a community center and done up all nice and proper. But way back in 1998, it was basically decrepit and left for dead, and we thought we were just going to tear it down.
Of course, when anyone starts talking about an abandoned building, especially one that might be haunted, we all start to ask the same questions, like, how long has it been abandoned?
It wasn't abandoned for that long, maybe 15 years, if I had to guess, before that happened, so we'll say like mid-80s.
The next thing people really begin to think about in these situations is, what kind of terrible thing could have happened here that would really warrant a good haunting? Maybe like a grisly axe murder, a freak fire, cult-centered mass suicide, something like that.
I don't know of any traumatizing things that have taken place in the history of it.
I actually got in touch with the Nahant Historical Society, and they told me that the school was abandoned in 1983 when it officially closed. And if you remember, Beef told us this story takes place somewhere around 1998, so his original guess was actually pretty accurate. The school had been abandoned for about 15 years at this point. It didn't reopen as a community center until 2003. As far as anything tragic happening there that would place ghosts at the heart of this whole situation, no, nothing.
So 10 o'clock, walking by the Valley Road School, I'm just staring at it because it looked perfect for Halloween, for lack of a better word. It was old, creepy, and all I could do was just stare at it. My friend Champ, I think, was blabbering on about something, and I was just staring at the school. And as I am, I see this figure just appear out of nowhere on the second floor. Real quick. It was quick because once I saw it, I totally myself and ran directly home. It just appeared briefly with both of its arms up, and then I pardon my French, beeline home, and my buddy Champ didn't know what the hell was going on, so he just sprinted after me, and I told him once we got to my front door. So it made me think, it scared the crap out of me, and I could barely sleep that night, being 13 years old, naive little teenager.
Is there any chance that you imagined it, or you're positive you definitely saw something?
Without a doubt, I saw something. I definitely, I remember it vividly. What was this, almost 20 years ago? I remember vividly seeing it. I'll never forget. It was a white figure. It was distinct. I could see its head. I could see its arms raised. Both arms were raised, and it just, I was staring at the school, and then it just flashed up. There's no doubt that I saw it. My only question is, and I'll never get the answer, is what the hell was it?
What are the odds in your mind that it could have been some other kids playing a prank or something, or what are the odds somebody could have broken into the school and been hiding up there and timed it perfectly? What are your thoughts?
I thought, I was young, but I had the wherewithal to realize, it probably was somebody who had broken into the school being Halloween night. More advanced teenagers than ourselves were causing more mischief than us. But on the flip side, I literally lived 2 blocks away from the school. It's probably no more than a quarter of a mile away. I had never heard of anyone breaking into that school and causing a ruckus. And I'm sure I would have, because, like I said, it's such a small town. So it definitely makes you wonder.
Have you heard of anybody else witnessing any paranormal things, seeing shapes in the windows or anything like that?
Honestly, I wish I could. I wish there were some dots that we could connect on this one, but there's not. Maybe it was something paranormal.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Beef.
Yeah, no problem. That was fun.
Catch you on the flip side, man.
All right, man. Have a good weekend, guys.
You too. Later. All right, so that was Beef's story, and obviously it's not mind-blowing, it's not a crazy tale, but I would say that's probably the most common type of ghost sighting you're going to get. If you ask 10 friends, I would say at least 5 of them have that kind of story where it was quick, it was a shadowy figure. So I kind of like that story just to kind of use as like a barometer, a base point for ghost sighting.
I think that's could be clearly misconstrued, like a misapprehension that would fall under. I don't think he really saw a ghost there, I'd say.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I think he says he saw something. He can't say it's a ghost or not. I would say if I lived in that town, it was Halloween, there was an abandoned school.
And you were young.
And I was young.
Like a teenager, yeah.
I would break into that school real quick. And, maybe he just saw a kid running around up there.
Yeah.
And again, though, it's his own imagination where it's Halloween night. You're already spooked out. It's late. He's with his buddy who didn't see anything. He saw it, bolted real fast. It happened so quick. It's kind of burned in his mind. But
exactly.
Again,
that's I think the most important thing. And like you said, Halloween, that's a pretty sweet thing to happen to a kid on Halloween.
That's a great story.
That's the kind of Halloween you want, is where you see something in a window.
That's the real trick.
Yeah. And then...
or is it a treat?
It's a treat. And also, it's stuck in his mind. So it must have had at that moment, whether it was real or not, it definitely scared him enough that he remembers it now and retells it. So
right. So let's jump into another sighting now that's a little more in depth.
The Brothers Mysterium.
Sean, thanks so much for taking the time, being a part of the show.
No, of course, man. Love to be a part of it.
All right. In our next story, we have my brother Tom.
I remember you had a story of ghost sightings in your very own house.
And his buddy, Sean.
I've had 2 in my life. The first one, for both of them, I should preface it, it was probably, first one was about 20 years old or so, still living in my parents' house, obviously. I was home from college. And it was the middle of the night. I woke up, and I kind of looked over to the side of my bed, and that's where I had a desk in my bedroom as I grew up. So I kind of looked over, and I saw there was a kid that was about my age, probably looked like he was 20. The thing that still stands out to me to this day is he had this bright blue shirt on, and I don't know why that stands out to me.
like clearly defined? It was like a three-dimensional guy. You couldn't see through him. It was a actual person. It wasn't like a shadowy figure.
It wasn't like a movie or anything like that where, you kind of see like, half see through them, half don't. Like, I saw a guy standing there. Like, it wasn't like it was, kind of a shadowy figure or anything along those lines. Like, I saw a dude standing there. So, but I look over and I see him at my desk, and he's kind of going through stuff. And meanwhile, like, I guess I just woke up out of a dream, whatever it was, but, like, I'm kind of disorganized, disoriented.
And you're 100% you were awake at this point. You said you had just woken up, but there's no chance that this was like, Inception type deal where you're asleep in a dream, you wake up in a dream. You were 100% awake when you saw him.
No, 100% sure that I was awake, just because I remember how freaked out I was that I couldn't go back to sleep. And I look over, and rather than being like, what the fuck are you doing in here? Like, I'm kind of just like, hey, like, what are you doing? Hey, who are you? Like, kind of just real disoriented and not really sure what was going on.
Right.
The guy never looked at me, which was weird. Like, never looked across, never, of course, if I'm breaking into someone's apartment or someone's house or something, and I'm going through their stuff and they wake up and see me, of course, the first thing I'm going to do is if they're like, hey, what are you doing? I'm going to look over and be like, oh, shit, I got to get out of here.
Right, naturally.
Naturally, of course. So, but meanwhile, this guy just kept ignoring me, kept looking through stuff, whatever it was. And then after probably about 10 seconds of that, walked toward the door, and I slept with my door closed. And when he got to the door, it never opened or anything. He kind of just almost went through the door. It sounds insane, but like that's exactly what I remember of it, and I vividly remember this. So I literally spent the next probably 2 hours just watching TV because I was so freaked out that I just saw that. So.
That is definitely crazy, man. Take us to the second sighting then.
So the second one, now this is probably, I guess I just graduated college at the time because I was still living at home. I hadn't yet moved out yet. So I was probably, I guess at this time, 23 maybe, somewhere around there. And similar to the first one, woke up in the middle of the night. And at this time, rather than seeing like, a guy or anything, like, going to the desk, I look over by where my garbage can was, and there was a girl that was probably about 4 or 5 years old, maybe. She was wearing like a little, like a white dress, like imagine, if you look back to like, I don't know, like you imagine like the 50s, what little girls would wear to school or church or something like that, like something like that. And I remember she had pigtails. She had blonde hair and pigtails. And she was like jumping rope. So rather than being like, I kind of everything clicked back from the first time, and I was, rather than, nervous or freaked out that there's something going on, at this point, I think I'm going to be like a ghost whisperer or something, and, I'll talk to the person, find out what their deal is. So I remember I asked the girl, I was like, hey, what's going on? What's your name? And I just tried to keep talking to her, and she just tried to keep jump roping. She didn't even acknowledge me, didn't notice I was even there, basically. And then she kept doing her thing. I kept talking to her for another, tried to keep talking to her for probably another 10, 15 seconds or so. And then she kind of just faded away, and that was it. So
crazy. So what's interesting here is the similarities of both are in your room, and both times it's interesting because you mentioned you tried to talk to them. They sort of not ignored you, but really couldn't even hear you, but you weren't.
What Tom is talking about here is what's known in paranormal circles as the stone tape theory. Pretty much it says that events from the past continuously reoccur, almost like a tape that's being played over and over again. And those who witness these stone tape replays can't interact with the ghosts because they're not really ghosts in the traditional sense. They're more just like images that have been frozen in time and are now playing on a loop.
You see all the time in movies when they wake up and there's a ghost there, that the ghost, freaks them out or haunts them, whatever it is. But
right.
Never felt any distress at the time. Never felt like this guy was going to attack me or this girl was going to attack me.
Right.
But obviously, I freaked out beyond belief. But outside of that, I never felt like he was there to harm me or anything like that.
Has anyone else in your family, any friends come over, seen either of those two spirits, we'll call them, or have they seen anything else in the house, or is it only just you, those two sightings, just in your room?
I asked my sister and I asked any friends that have ever stayed over. No one's ever answered that. Like, no one's ever been able to say, hey, I've seen something there before. I've never asked my parents, which is weird because I guess they would be the people to go to since they've slept there every night basically for the past 30 years. So, but yeah, next time I talk to them, I'll definitely ask them about it. But that's the kind of the one hole, I guess, if you will.
Do you know anything about like the history of the house, when it was built, previous owners, any kind of connection as to who this guy or girl could have been, might have been?
Prior to us moving in, there was nothing there. It was just land and trees. There was no house. It wasn't like, an Amityville horror type thing where there was a murder there 15 years ago when we happened to move in.
Right. They're the first owners pretty much.
They're the first owners. Yeah, I don't know if there was anything going on in those woods, like if kids were playing and something happened there, but nothing that I've ever heard of. So,
do you believe in ghosts?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, hey, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for sharing your story. Definitely hit up your folks, see if you can dig up anything or if they've seen anything, and let us know, and we'll keep the listeners updated as well.
Yeah, of course, man.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool. No, thanks for having me.
It's hard to really like make a complete call on that one, because with the first story, with Beef's story, he was far away. He was looking through a window. It was Halloween, like you said.
Right.
And it was very, like, the situation was very gray. Where this story now, this is like a clear. He could tell you what kind of clothes this guy was wearing,
right? Not a shadowy
what he was
figure.
doing.
Exactly.
He was going through his desk.
It was a burglar ghost or something, some kind
or
of
a curious ghost of some kind.
That's true. So again,
did you ask him if anything was missing from his desk, or if things had actually been physically rearranged?
He doesn't recall anything being moved or misplaced. He said it appeared as though the guy was going through the top drawer, which he said was kind of a mess anyway. So unfortunately, even if things were scattered or moved around, he would never have noticed it.
Okay. And what about his parents? Did he ever talk to them?
He did. They said they never saw anything, no ghosts, no figures, nothing unexplainable, nor did they have any more information about the history of the house or who those two figures might have been.
The Brothers Mysterium.
Franco, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
For this ghost sighting story, Tom called up a friend of his named Franco. They're old college buddies.
Our mutual friend, we'll just call him Crazy Legs. He told me that you have a ghost sighting story. So could you break that down for us?
Sure thing. I worked in a restaurant in my hometown, and it was an old restaurant on a river. It used to be an old mill. It was called the River Run, but better known as the Mill Pond Tavern. Now, the actual ground where I worked, it's a different building, but it had burnt down a while ago, and some of the wood was actually restored and used in the same restaurant that I worked at.
The town that Franco's referring to is Northford. It's in New Haven County, Connecticut. I did a little digging into the town's history, and it turns out that in 1830, a guy by the name of Maltby Fowler opened up a button factory right in the same area where Franco's story takes place. After hunting for a while, I found one other story that talks about the same supernatural element that Franco's going to tell you about in a minute. According to that version, this button factory built by Maltby Fowler, that's the building that burnt down and was later rebuilt as the Mill Pond Tavern.
So part of the wood was able to be reused, part of it wasn't, but a lot of people died in the fire.
Now, according to the other version of this story I found, there was a woman who died in the fire, and she was the main victim who later became the ghost. But in Franco's story, there were many victims. One in particular was a man who is survived by his wife or fiancée or mistress.
The story is not clear, but he was definitely involved with this woman.
Now, the way Franco tells it, this woman, whose husband or lover or whatever had died in the fire, was constantly visiting the charred remains of this building and even the empty lot that it became after it had been demolished.
She would go back, and she was always wearing black in mourning of her loss.
So eventually, years and years and years go by, and it's assumed that this mourning woman in black eventually just dies of natural causes. But that doesn't put an end to her visits.
So what happened years and years later, when my boss, the owner of the restaurant, restored the place, and when he was owning it, he and the manager had always seen glimpses of of the ghost. The bar manager had seen the ghost more often, and he always said that he would see her either in the basement or in the parking lot, which was the two main spots. You never really saw the face, but you always saw kind of the body, and she was always wearing like a long black garb dress with like kind of covering her whole body from head to foot. But they would notice it when they restored or did anything major to the property. So whenever the building was changed in a big way, they had noticed the sighting.
Franco's statement about the ghost appearing more frequently when the building was being updated is actually a pretty common occurrence. A lot of people who experience ghost sightings claim that the spirit they saw may have been somehow roused or reawakened by a disturbance or alteration in the space that the ghost inhabits.
They had just restored the bottom floor of the restaurant, so they just redid all the wood. They really shined it. It was a big process. And the way that the restaurant was kind of designed in the back of the house where the kitchen part was, there was a big staircase that looked down into the back of the bar area, and there was two storage rooms. They were really kind of creepy looking, like an old basement-like thing. So to the right and to the left of the main staircase, there was these big storage rooms, and then there was the bar beyond that. So that was like the back of the bar area, closed off to the rest of to the bar downstairs. And I happened to be looking down. I was moving things up and down between the bar and the back of the restaurant, but I had stopped at the top of the stairs and had looked down, and that's when I saw the figure move from the room to the right of the staircase to across the bottom of the staircase and then to the left of the room there. It was a solid figure walking by. It wasn't like hovering or anything. I mean, I thought it was the bartender from the glance, but I clearly saw it. I didn't see the head because it was covered, so I couldn't make out her face, but it was definitely, I saw her body moving from room to room, and I just kind of was staring back there because at first I was like, wow, well, maybe that was the bartender. And then as I was staring down the case, I saw the bartender come from the main floor, and she just kind of looked at me and she was like, what'd you see there? Like, you looked shocked. I was like, nah, I think I just saw the lady in black. And that's what we referred to her as, the lady in black.
And then I'm going to ask you, so you can say with 100% certainty that you saw a ghost.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I definitely saw it. I mean, a lot of people won't believe me when I say that, but I definitely feel that I saw a real ghost.
All right. Hey, Franco, thanks a lot, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
All right. So right before we started listening to this story or this interview, you said the group thing. And I think that's interesting because the thing you have to consider in a situation like this is how does suggestibility play into it? The group all says they see something and now they've passed that on to you. So the lens of your imagination has now been reworked, so to speak.
So you're saying what came first, the chicken or the egg, or in this case, the ghost or the ghost reports to which people heard about a woman in black and consequently saw a woman in black, which could have just been a shadow or a cat or something else.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I don't know. I mean, I've been in dark basements before in situations like this, and it's easy to misinterpret things, especially in a place where there's lots of different people working who can kind of be going about their business separately. I don't know. I mean,
it's one of those things too, where this is why we're going to try to explore some kind of urban legends, local legends, because it could be the type of thing where just everybody in town is like, oh, it's the old lady in black. And as you said, it's just suggestibility. But a small part of me always wonders, is it because so many people are seeing a woman in black that this myth has perpetuated for so long because there is something to it?
Right. See, it goes both ways. Are people seeing the same thing because it's been suggested to them, or are they seeing the same thing and that for lends credence to the story?
But this one is interesting. And again, a different type of sighting where, basically this whole town, everybody at this restaurant, patrons and employees alike, all report seeing the same thing, the same woman. And as we heard in Franco's own words, he very clearly saw a woman walk past who ended up being the woman in black.
The restaurant that Franco was talking about, which was renamed the River Run after this fire, has since closed and apparently has reopened under the name Cedars at the Mill Pond. And Mill was also part of the first name way back when. So I figured I would give the place a call and see if I can get a little history from the people that work there. So here we go.
The number you have dialed is not in service. Please be sure you have the right number in mind and have dialed it correctly. This is a recording.
Was that a recording?
It was. So apparently this place is now closed down too.
I don't know where Morgan's
Like, you know
is.
where the train tracks are in Japan?
Yes.
Okay, so like right near the train
Yeah,
tracks.
by the 76 house. It's like
Okay.
that old church. The ones that are like...
This conversation that you were just kind of thrown into is between myself and my friend Nicole. And we're discussing some details related to a ghost sighting story that she had a couple years back.
Okay. So in high school, I had to have been about a sophomore, I think. So I was probably about 15. I was walking in Japan, New York with my boyfriend at the time. It was the middle of summer. It was nighttime. So it was really hot out. And we took a walk and we were walking past the cemetery that's in Japan, New York. And we walked past these two headstones that were kind of off to the side from the rest of the cemetery. And my boyfriend walked up to one of the headstones and touched it and was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, buddy, that you're away from all the others." And I said, you shouldn't touch things like that. If there's something attached to it, it's going to follow you. And we were totally joking. We actually turned back around because we were headed towards where it hits 303. And as we were walking back, I felt kind of weird, as I do when I walk at night. So I turned around. There's nothing there. Walked farther. I turn around. There's still nothing there. And we walk a little bit more. And I turn around, and there's something standing by the tree a few feet away from where those headstones were. And I turn around, and I'm staring at it, and I look at my boyfriend, and I'm like, "What is that?" And he turns around and sees it as well and starts running. And then I start running as well. He did not wait for me. And we're running. So we're running back to my house and we're out of breath. And I'm like, "Don't tell me what you saw. Don't tell me what you saw." And he's like, What was that?" And there's cursing in there that I'm not going to say. But he's like, "What is that? What was that? What was that?" And I'm like, "Don't tell me what you saw. Don't tell me what you saw. I don't want it to, don't tell me what you saw. When we get home, I want you to draw it." So I made sure that we did not converse about what we saw. I got to my house. I got a pen and paper. I handed him a pen and paper, and I said, "Go in this room, draw what you saw. I'm going to draw what I saw, and we'll reconvene." So about 10 minutes later, we walk up to each other and hand each other the papers, and they look basically exactly the same, and we start describing the same thing. So what we both saw was a figure with its arms crossed, wearing a heavy shawl and a full dress. It had no face. It was all one color, and it had something called a mob cap on. And I know what a mob cap is because I do historical reenacting, so I was able to kind of pick up on what the person was wearing. And if I was alone and saw this, I would have thought my brain created this, but this was a new boyfriend, and he was not familiar with this reenacting for this time period. And he kept saying, "It looks like something from The Crucible, that play The Crucible. The hat looked like something from The Crucible." I guess that was his only recognition of that time period, so that's what he kept saying, and the drawings looked exactly the same. So the fact that something or someone was wearing something that was for winter with a mob cap in the middle of summer was really, really strange. And it was all both agreed it was all one color, and it had its arms on itself crossed, and it was kind of running its arms up and down itself. And I know we only looked for about 30 seconds, but both saw the exact same thing. And I actually went and looked up the burial plots on that lot to see if what we had been touching was a female, and I think it was actually a child and a man from the 1800s, so the clothing didn't really match what we saw. But I did not sleep by myself for months after that. So that's that story.
Were you a believer in ghosts before this experience?
Yes.
Okay. But this is the first experience you had ever had?
That was my first personal experience, yeah.
Okay. So you'd say 100% you are a believer in ghosts then?
100%.
First of all, amazing heads up move by Nicole to not discuss that at all. Nobody say a word, go back to the house, and then draw it.
Yeah, I meant to ask her if she had that thought in mind prior. Like if she told herself one night, like, if I ever see a ghost with someone else, this is what we'll do.
Either way, very impressive, kind of awesome. Obviously, they were in a cemetery at night, spooky atmosphere, imaginations could have been going, but to individually see the same thing, draw the same thing without, conversing about it and stuff. And even like she was describing, he didn't know, the style of dress and the names of anything like that. And she drew the same exact picture. That is something that is very, very hard to explain.
Though, technically, just because they both drew the same thing doesn't mean it was necessarily a ghost. Say it was a woman actually standing there in the flesh wearing a mob cap, and they both saw it, they both would have drawn the same thing. Now, what the hell would a lady be doing out there in a mob cap? Nicole brought that up too, and all that kind of stuff. I'm just playing devil's advocate, though.
Next time on the Brothers Mysterium.
When people go to a medium, they're looking for a direction.
Which is why I have what I call the Harry Houdini test.
I've got a father who passed, and she goes, oh, I know, Anthony.
Because in a way, you're resurrecting these people who have died.
So she goes, his father, Joseph, he's coming through.
Thinking I'd be sneaky and pull one over on them and being like, you can't cold read me.
Oh my goodness, this is crazy.
That concludes our first episode. I want to say thank you to Beef, Sean, Franco, and Nicole for all sharing their stories. And I want to thank all you guys for listening and tuning in. The clip you heard about modern ghosts comes from Aziz Ansari's Buried Alive, which came out November 1st, 2013. If you've never heard any of his stand-up, go check it out. He's awesome. Our theme and background music come from The Nevergrin. Check them out at www.thenevergrin.com.
We'd also like to thank Gwen and Dan Hunsett for lending their voices to this episode. And as always, we invite you to join the discussion. Let us know what you think. Shoot us an email at thebrothersmysterium@gmail.com. You can tweet us at Mysterium Bros or reach us on Facebook. The Brothers Mysterium, just search it, will pop up. And as always, let us know what you think of our episode. If you agree with us, disagree, if you have experiences you want to share, you want to be on the show, let us know. Or if you just have a topic you want to hear us discuss. We're always open, we're always listening. And as always, thank you for listening to us.